Hello and welcome everyone to French Fried Trains. It's Saturday, August 3rd, 2019. After going to a car show, I came out rail fanning. The word on Facebook that day was that there was a monster ethanol train sitting up in Piqua, and it was getting ready to head south, somewhere between 4 and 5 p.m. And I knew I had to catch this train, because it said it had Canadian and BC rail power, and I've never caught a BC rail in person. So I was here for the long haul, and I was going to stay as long as it took to watch that train go by. This was the first train I got after coming out that day. I only had to wait about half an hour for it. A southbound manifest train, led by an ES44DC and a GP40 originally built for the B&O. Obviously, this wasn't the ethanol train. But lucky for me, while I was waiting, a few more trains came. These two covered hoppers are really rusty, usually a sign of phosphate. And a string of tank cars bring up the rear of this guy. After he faded into the distance, it was another 45 minutes to an hour before the next train arrived. This was also another southbound, and this had some decent power on it. A horn show from the engineer on a 4-locomotive lash-up with an ES44 ACH leading, a GP38-2 behind that, and a pair of GP40-2s in the 3rd and 4th spots. The GP30-2 that was in the 2nd spot has had a lot of different paint schemes over its lifetime. It was originally a Conrail unit and wore the Conrail quality colors. Later, when acquired by CSX, it was in the CSX blue and gray Stealth, and then upgraded to the YN2 paint scheme, and now it's in its current paint scheme. So that locomotive has sported a lot of different looks. Both GP40-2s in the 3rd and 4th spots were originally purchased for the B&O and wore the chassis system colors for many years before being acquired by CSX. You can always tell the ex-chassis system units on CSX because almost all of them had their headlights up above the cab and not in the nose as CSX usually does. And even with 4 locomotives on the front, this train still had another surprise for us, a distributed power unit. An ET44AH, pointing backwards. And here's a single auto rack slipped into this manifest train. I've been seeing that more and more lately. 1, 2, or even 3 auto racks slipped in somewhere on a manifest. Now at this point, it was about time for that ethanol train to be here, as it had been 3 hours since the report he left Piqua. And there was actually a northbound already waiting in the siding as this one passed. So I was slightly bummed that this wasn't the ethanol train, but it was still a good catch. And immediately after this train went by, the signal went lunar. Would this be the ethanol train? Let's find out. This was the ethanol train I've been waiting all evening for, and as reported, it had a pair of Canadian Pacific locomotives on the front, an ES44AC and an AC44CW. An awesome catch. This was one heck of a giant train. It was reported to be just shy of 11,000 feet, due to the fact that it was really 2 trains combined into one. Just ethanol tank after ethanol tank after ethanol tank. An old covered hopper as a buffer car, and here's the DPUs as reported. First up, a Canadian National SD75I. The I stands for isolated cab, which is supposed to be quieter for the crew. Second is the main event for me, a BC Rail C40-AM, the first BC Rail I've ever seen in person, and it was worth it and worth the wait. Only 84 C40-AMs were ever built, and all for Canadian Railways utilizing the wide cowl body. And finally, the third DPU is a Canadian National SD7M-2. The SD7M-2s were made to comply with Tier 2 emission standards. So since I already cut it for the still frames, let's watch those locomotives go by again. I don't know if you can tell from the video sound or not, but the BC Rail and the first Canadian National, the first 2 DPUs, were running dead in tow. Only the third DPU unit was actually turned on. I was really glad I got to see this train, and it was well worth the wait. Now, like I said earlier, during all of this, there was a northbound sitting in the siding, patiently waiting. And about 5 minutes after this train had finally passed, he got his clearance to finally get out of that siding and head north. an auto-rack train with a pair of ES44 ACHs leading and then an SD40-3 rebuild. Originally built as an SD42 for the Louisville and Nashville. And although that first cut of cars was loaded down with pickup truck frames, most of the actual auto racks were empty. Some of them had cars in them, but most of them were empty. And 3 locomotives is plenty of power to get this stopped train on the move pretty quickly. Some old Conrail boxcars there. And some more pickup truck frames. And this auto rack's missing a panel here. I've seen one missing a panel a couple times now. I'm unsure if it's the same auto rack I keep seeing, or there's more than one with that panel missing. And so, after many hours spent waiting for that ethanol train to go by, and finally catching it and him leaving, that was everything I got on Saturday. So that's all for this episode of French Fried Trains. Stay tuned for more. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and have a great day.